Emily Parker had been staring at the blank wall of her apartment for what felt like hours, the soft hum of the rain outside matching the frustration in her mind. She had moved to Maplewood only a few months ago, hoping that a change of scenery would inspire her creativity. But instead, she found herself stuck in a rut, a small, lonely apartment that echoed with the lack of direction she felt. Her art project, a mural for the community center, was due in a week. And every sketch she made seemed flat, lifeless, a pale echo of what she wanted to create. She had tried every technique, every color palette, every idea she could think of. Yet nothing felt right. She sighed, staring out of the window at the glistening streets, the puddles reflecting the warm glow of the streetlights. Across the hall lived Daniel Harris, a man she had always admired from a distance. He was older, in his early 50s, with a calm, confident presence that made the people around him feel at ease. Daniel had once been an architect and had a reputation for designing some of the most beautiful homes in town. He was quiet, reserved, but when he spoke, it was with authority and warmth that drew people in without them even realizing it. Emily often saw him sketching or tending to his balcony garden, always focused, always calm. There was something about him's quiet patience, his way of listening, that had always fascinated her. Tonight, a moment of desperation, Emily grabbed her umbrella and stepped into the rain. Her heart raced as she walked across the hall and knocked softly on his door. She debated leaving a note instead, but something in her told her to face the possibility of rejection. To speak directly, to reach beyond the wall that had become, both literal and figurative. The door opened and Daniel stood there, taller than she remembered, with that warm, patient smile that seemed to make everything feel lighter. "Emily, what brings you out in this rain?" he asked, his voice steady, comforting. She swallowed her nerves. I was hoping you could help me with something," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "It's my mural project. I can't seem to get it right, and I thought maybe your experience could guide me." His smile widened slightly, not in amusement, but in encouragement. "Of course. Come in," he said, stepping aside. "Let's see what you're working on." Inside, Daniel's apartment was as she expected, warm, organized, and filled with the evidence of a life built with care and creativity. Sketches lined the walls, framed photographs of architectural work, small models of buildings he had designed, each meticulously arranged. There was a quiet sense of order, of thoughtfulness, that made Emily feel slightly nervous, but also inspired. She unrolled her canvas on his dining table, revealing a mess of colors and shapes that failed to capture the story she wanted to tell. Daniel leaned in, examining it with a careful eye, his brow slightly furrowed in concentration. "You have good instincts," he said finally, his voice calm but firm. "But you're holding back. Art isn't just about getting it right, about telling a story. What story do you want to tell?" Emily hesitated, unsure if she could explain it aloud. But the frustration of her own limitations pushed her to speak. I wanted to feel like hope. Like someone can come here, see it, and feel better. Like it's a place that lifts people up." Daniel nodded slowly, considering her words. "Then let's work on that," he said. "Sometimes hope starts with a single, bold stroke. You don't have to make everything perfect at once. Let the colors guide you. Let the shapes tell the story you feel inside." The rain outside continued, a gentle tapping against the windows. As they spread out paints, brushes, and sketchbooks across the table, Emily felt an unexpected sense of ease in his presence. He was patient, never rushing her, but offering guidance and ideas that made her feel seen and understood. He suggested ways to layer colors, to create depth, to use unexpected shapes, to draw the eye, to embrace mistakes as part of the process. Each word, each suggestion felt like a small spark igniting her creativity, a light cutting through the fog of doubt she had carried for so long. Hours passed without either of them noticing. They talked not only about the mural, but about other things too. Daniel shared stories from his career, challenges he had faced, buildings he had loved designing. and even mistakes that had taught him more than successes ever could. Emily listened, fascinated, feeling a connection that went beyond admiration for his skill. She shared small details about her life, her move to Maplewood, the reasons she had chosen art, and the lonely evenings that often stretched too long. Daniel listened with quiet attention, never interrupting, never judging, simply allowing her to speak and validating her feelings with the occasional nod or a smile at some point. The conversation drifted from art to life itself. Daniel mentioned the places he had traveled, the cities and towns that had shaped him, and the quiet moments that had taught him what truly mattered. Emily found herself sharing dreams she had not voiced to anyone before, hopes of opening her own studio someday, fears that her work would never matter, and the longing for something or someone that made her heart feel lighter. She realized, in the slow unfolding of the evening, that her admiration for him was more than that. It was an attraction, yes, but not the shallow kind she had imagined. In fleeting daydreams, it was the kind that grew from respect, from shared moments, from feeling truly seen. His presence was calming yet invigorating. It's like standing near a fire on a cold night, warm, comforting, and quietly thrilling all at once. Daniel, for his part, seemed to relax as well. He smiled more freely, laughed at her occasional frustrated outbursts, and offered encouragement in ways that felt gentle but meaningful. There was an unspoken awareness between them, a recognition of the unusual closeness forming. Yet they both carefully navigated it with respect and subtlety, letting the shared passion for art guide their connection rather than forcing it into words. Finally, as the evening wore on, Emily glanced at her watch in surprise. Hours had passed, but the mural had transformed from a chaotic jumble into something alive, a canvas that seemed to breathe with possibility and hope. She couldn't believe how much progress they had made, and more importantly, she couldn't believe how much she had grown in her confidence and understanding as she gathered her supplies to leave. Daniel stood at the door with that same warm smile. "Emily," he said softly, "you're closer to your story than you realize. Keep trusting yourself. If you want, tomorrow we can continue working on it together." Her heart raced. She nodded, barely able to speak. "I'd like that," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. The rain outside had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the soft glow of streetlights, the reflections shimmering like promises of new beginnings as she stepped into the hallway. She felt a sudden weight of anticipation. Daniel's presence lingered in her mind, the way he had looked at her sketches, the quiet encouragement in his voice, the moments of laughter that had felt like something more. Something tender and unspoken had passed between the muck connection. She could neither ignore nor fully understand. Yet one that made her chest feel impossibly full. Before she could leave completely, Emily noticed a small piece of paper slipped under her door. She picked it up with trembling fingers. It was a note in Daniel's neat handwriting. "Tomorrow we'll start again. I think you're closer to the story than you realize." Her heart skipped a beat, and she felt an unfamiliar warmth spread through her chest. She held the note for a long moment, reading the words over and over, imagining the conversations and shared moments that lay ahead. There was a tension there, yes, a curiosity, quiet longing, but it was gentle. The kind that didn't demand answers, yet made every thought of him linger in her mind. Emily returned to her apartment. The night quiet, except for the occasional drip of water from the gutters. She set the note on her table, staring at it as if it could tell her more than the words themselves. The mural, her frustrations, her uncertainties, they all seemed lighter now, somehow manageable. And at the center of it all was Daniel, a figure both inspiring and quietly magnetic, whose presence had already begun to change the way she saw her own abilities, her own heart. She lay awake that night thinking about the way he had guided her, the way he had listened, the way he had made her feel seen. She realized that part of what she felt wasn't just gratitude, it was admiration. Yes, but also a gentle, growing attachment that she didn't quite know how to name. And yet it wasn't overwhelming or reckless. It was patient like a spark, waiting to become a flame. A quiet promise that tomorrow could bring something more by the time she finally drifted into sleep. Her mind was filled with colors, shapes, and possibilities not just for the mural, but for the connection that had begun quietly between her and her older neighbor, Daniel Harris. Something had shifted, subtly and profoundly, and she couldn't wait to see what the next day would bring. The next morning, Emily woke with a sense of anticipation she hadn't felt in months. The note from Daniel still rested on her table, neatly written in his careful handwriting, promising another session of guidance. She dressed quickly, grabbed her sketchbook, and left her apartment, the crisp air of Maplewood filling her lungs. Even the usual sounds of traffic and distant construction felt different, brighter, more alive. She had no idea exactly what she expected from the day, only that she wanted to be near him, to see the mural come alive and perhaps discover more about the connection that had begun quietly between them. When she arrived at Daniel's apartment, he was already at the window, adjusting one of his sketches as the morning light streamed in. His hair, slightly ruffled, caught the sunlight, and his brown eyes met hers with that calm warmth that made her chest flutter unexpectedly. "Good morning," he said, his voice steady and gentle. "I hope you slept well." Emily smiled, a little nervously, feeling a small thrill at the sound of him saying her name. "I did, thank you. I'm ready to get started." Daniel gestured toward the dining table, already prepared with paints, brushes, and a blank section of the mural. Stretched out for her. "I thought we could start with the background today," he suggested, "then layer the shapes and colors that tell your story. First, tea." He poured a cup for her, the aroma of herbs filling the room, and handed it to her with a small smile. Emily accepted it, feeling warmth not just from the cup, but from the thoughtfulness behind the gesture. They began to work, their hands occasionally brushing as they adjusted colors or held a sketch in place. It was a quiet, comforting rhythm, the kind of interaction that built trust and intimacy without words. Emily found herself talking more freely than she had before, explaining her ideas, her frustrations, and even her small joys, the songs that inspired her. The memories of childhood art projects, the little victories that kept her going despite doubt. Daniel listened intently, never interrupting, his eyes always on hers when she spoke, nodding, encouraging, offering small suggestions in a voice that was patient and steady. As the morning turned into afternoon, their conversations drifted beyond the mural. Daniel told her about his travels, the cities and towns where he had found inspiration for his designs, the challenges he had faced when clients didn't understand his vision. Emily shared her own experiences, her move to Maplewood, the loneliness of starting over in a new place, and her hope that her art could make people feel something, even if it was just a small spark of joy. Each story seemed to deepen their connection, the shared vulnerability creating a gentle bond neither had expected but both welcomed. At one point, Emily paused, brush in hand, and glanced at Daniel. "You've changed the way I see my work," she admitted softly. "I never thought I could feel this confident about it." He smiled, a quiet, genuine smile that made her heart skip a beat. "You had it in you all along, just helping you see it," he said. There was a pause, a small hesitation, and Emily noticed the faintest shift in his expression, something tender, something personal that lingered for just a moment before he returned to the mural. They continued painting, layering colors and shapes, the mural slowly coming alive with a sense of hope and movement. But it wasn't just the art that was growing neat, was the connection between them. Each shared glance, each gentle suggestion, each laugh over a spilled paintbrush added another layer of understanding and warmth. Emily realized she was drawn to him not just for his skill, but for the way he made her feel seen, the way he valued her ideas, and the quiet strength he carried without demanding attention. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, painting the room in gold and amber tones, Daniel set down his brush and looked at Emily with a mixture of pride and something she couldn't quite Name, you've captured something special today, he said, his voice soft. It's more than just colors on a wall. It's alive. It feels like you. Emily felt a rush of emotion. I couldn't have done it without you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. You make everything clearer, easier to understand. Daniel hesitated, then smiled, but there was a moment of vulnerability in his eyes that made Emily's heart ache in a way she hadn't expected. I'm glad, he said simply. But you've done the work. You've discovered your story. It's just helped you hear it. There was a pause, the kind of silence that feels heavier than words, filled with unspoken questions and possibilities. Emily realized she wanted more than guidance from him. She wanted to understand him, to know him, to be close in ways that were both exciting and terrifying. And yet there was no rush, no pressure, only a gentle growing awareness that their connection mattered more than either of them had anticipated. The rain returned that evening, soft and persistent, but neither of them noticed it at first. They had moved the mural to a better lit area, and Emily was adjusting some final details when Daniel spoke again. You know, Emily, he said, voice calm, there's more to this than just art. You're different around me. I notice it. I think I feel it too. Emily froze, brush in hand, her chest tightening. She had felt its attraction, a longing, a connection that went beyond admiration, but hearing him acknowledge it made it real and thrilling and terrifying all at once. I feel it too, she admitted, voice trembling slightly. Daniel's expression softened, his eyes warm and honest. I didn't want to rush anything, he said. I didn't want to make you uncomfortable, but I think there's something here worth exploring, if we're careful, if we're patient. Emily felt a mixture of relief and excitement, a fluttering in her chest that made the world outside the window blur into insignificance. I want that, she whispered. I want to see where this goes. For the rest of the evening, they continued working on the mural, but the air between them had shifted. There was a new awareness, a subtle intimacy that made each glance, each touch of the hand, each shared laugh feel charged with meaning. The mural itself became a reflection of their growing connection, vibrant, layered, full of depth and light. As the night drew near and the last colors were added, Daniel stood back to examine the work. Emily followed, her eyes wide with pride and satisfaction. The mural wasn't perfect, but it was alive, just as he had said. And it carried something deeper than the images themselves, a sense of hope, of possibility, and, quietly, of their shared bond. Daniel turned to her, his expression softening. You've done something extraordinary, Emily, not just with this mural, but with yourself. You've allowed yourself to grow, to trust, to create, and you've allowed me to be a part of that. Emily felt tears prick her eyes, not from sadness, but from the intensity of the moment. Thank you, she said simply, meaning every word, for everything. There was a pause, a quiet moment where the room seemed to shrink, leaving only the two of them and the mural between them. Daniel stepped closer, his presence calm and reassuring, yet undeniably magnetic. Emily, I want to be honest. I don't know what the future holds. There are things to consider, the difference in our lives, the way the world might see it. But I do know this: I care about you, more than I expected to, and more than I probably should. Emily's heart raced. I care about you too, she whispered. And I think we can figure it out together. They shared a long, quiet look, a silent agreement that whatever came next, they would navigate it carefully, thoughtfully, and with respect for each other. There was no rush, no need for declarations or labels, only a mutual recognition that something rare and tender had begun. Before leaving that evening, Emily packed her brushes and paints, lingering by the door. As Daniel walked her to the hallway, tomorrow, he said, we'll add the finishing touches. And maybe we can share another cup of tea, just the two of us. Emily smiled, cheeks warm, and nodded. It's like that, she said softly, as she stepped into the hallway. The soft glow of the apartment lights reflected on the wet floor, creating a sense of magic and possibility. She felt a quiet thrill, a sense of hope that had nothing to do with the mural alone. This was the start of something tender, something emotional, something neither of them fully understood yet. But both were eager to explore. The night was silent, except for the occasional drip of rain from the gutters. But Emily felt a gentle warmth that followed her all the way back to her apartment. She placed her sketchbook on the table, her heart still racing, her mind full of colors, possibilities, and the quiet certainty that Daniel Harris had changed her life in ways she hadn't anticipated, and that the story between them was only just beginning. By the time she lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, Emily realized that the mural had become more than a school project. It was a reflection of her growth, her courage, and the tender connection she shared with Daniel. It was alive, full of hope, and full of the promise that life could surprise her in the most unexpected and beautiful ways. And for the first time in a long time, she felt ready to embrace it.